Hey guys, and welcome to my UDK tutorial series, part 11. In this I'll be showing you how to actually use sounds and position them around and get sounds to kind of get like you want. Now, I did use the sound cue editor as an example of like importing some sounds and editing them a little bit in one video. I may touch on that just a little bit to kind of refresh that in this, but basics are all still there. Now, and again, I know this entire building it should be completely redone. I notice this every single time because the camera's all messed up and all this kind of stuff. But for the purposes of these tutorials, it's fine. Now, I did do some changes to the level. Terrain was one of the last few things, so I did this. And like I said, I used some of the things that I showed you and just kind of made this nice little valley type thing. Added some nice grass alongside, made it go up a little bit, added some grass all over the place, position the sun just right there, and we get some nice ray effects. If we go and look, some nice ray effects, so it's pretty cool. And I added some rocks in some random places, and I did this because now I've got this little sound thing here. I'm going to move this, and whoops, I did not want you to do that. You okay? You're not attenuating. Good. Now, before I get into what this is, I need to increase the size. Now, just so you know, with a light or anything with like an icon like this, like even the light there, if you increase the actual size, like down here, it only increases the icon size. It doesn't actually increase the effect of the thing. So that is something important to note. Now, what this is I've got kind of this set up. Now, if you notice, there are two yellow volumes here. This one right here, this is the light mask volume. So this is what's calculating the lighting for the whole level. Now this one, the same color, but this is a reverb volume. Now what this is it can help you control your it's basically allows you to set up an ambient zone. So this is like basically the forward half of the level, because I didn't really feel like taking the time to get geometry mode out and separate the vertexes here and, you know, make the thing go around the building. But it's the whole front half here, and what this will do is allow you to set up these zones, and these zones can help you really control your audio very well. Now, like pretty much everything in UDK, there's, you know, places you want to use this and places you don't, so you just kind of have to find where. But like, you know, this is a good example for being inside and outside. Like if you have a small little building, you have, like, for instance, it's a power plant, okay? You have generators running inside. Now, if you were to walk up to any building and there were sounds inside, you aren't going to be able to hear all the sounds inside like you would if all those things that are making noise were outside. You go into the building and you can hear them, okay? You know, depending on if they're on multiple floors or not. But and this is just because of the walls. It muffles the sound and eventually makes the sound so you can't hear it. You know, like if you walk into a restaurant, you can hear everything going on in the restaurant, but you can't hear the outside because of all the stuff going on in the restaurant. Things like that. This is what this does. It actually creates a muffling area and a fade in, fade out area so that you can hear the stuff and all that kind of craziness. Do know that unless you set it up with the actual sound actor itself, then you will be able to hear the sound continuously. You know, because the way I have this set up right now, even though this has sphere of effect, it just hasn't been updated correctly. I'll go ahead and open the sound menu up, I don't have it attenuating, and before I'd said I didn't know what this was. Basically, this means that, like, you know, it's area of effect. It's fade in, fade out area. So I don't actually have it having one of those. So it will go infinitesimally, or infinitely. I'll just say infinitely. Kind of like the dominant light would with the sun. So if just keep that in mind whenever you're building these. Unless you want a sound to go forever, you want to make sure that it's attenuating. And basically, whenever you're outside of this zone, the volume of whatever is inside will be diminished, and then will be muffled if you set it so. And here's the options for that right here. The rest of this is just where everything is there, you know, debug and whatnot. Because those are standard on every single thing. Now, I wanted to let people know that, because you would think, you know, you would think that once you got out of this, you walk a certain distance away and you just wouldn't be able to hear it anymore. But because I don't have this attenuating, I don't actually have a set maximum range. So this, you would get a muffling effect. Just if you were to walk infinitely away from this, you would just get this muffling effect and stuff. So just keep that in mind whenever you're building these. And, you know, sometimes you want to use that, because if it's a big outside area, sometimes you want to have those. And if you were to go into another ambient zone, it would kind of take over. So, you know, if you mess around with it enough, you'll figure it out how it works. And I'm kind of jumping all over the place here, but I'll go ahead and get into the options of this, and then I'll get into the options of how to set up. Well, I should actually do that the other way around. Doesn't matter. First of all, you have the volume control of things inside. So this is important, because whenever you play a game, you have the volume level of the game itself. Okay, and you can turn that up and down. And then you can turn your computer volume up and down. Okay, that's a given. Now, here you have, and I don't really know why I said those two things. I don't know. Just follow along and pretend I'm not being stupid. Now, whenever you go in and you set up the sounds for the game, because in a game, you know, in your computer and all that kind of stuff, you have like your computer sound, that your overall sound that tones just everything down at once. Now, you can go in and set individual sound levels, and then the same is true in a game. You can have your individual, like your music. It's typically like your music, your SFX, and, you know, sometimes your sound effects and voice and all that kind of things. Now, you can go in here and set the individual volumes of a sound, and then your volume is also determined by, like, the recording level of it whenever you put your sound in there, and then of course the sound level of what you set it to be whenever you edit it, if you edit it. And then you can actually set the sound level whenever you do this, and set the sound again here. So you can have lots of different variations of the sound of the same thing. So basically what this does is everything within this volume will this is like the master control of all the things. Now, you can have one that's louder than the other. You'll have the individual volume too, but this is basically like the master volume, like of your computer or something. So you could have the individual sounds of the game or of multiple programs or something, and then tone it down. It all tones down, but one's maybe still louder than the other. And so that's kind of what this does. So you can adjust it and tone them all up and down at the same time. You can't really do them individually unless you were to go to each specific sound and do that. So, and then the fade time of, I guess, going in and out of it. I don't know why that's... Oh, no, I got that wrong. I'm sorry. This is the volume of the actual echoing. All that I said is wrong. But, I mean, that still applies. That still applies, you know, because of the volume, what I said, because you have multiple types of volume. So whenever an option has volume, you know, like that, it's just... I completely messed that up. This first part is for the echoing. So this will be the volume for all the echoing going on. This is a master control for all of the echoing. So it's the same thing that I said. It's just the echoing only. And you don't even have to have any echoing. You could click that and it wouldn't have any echoing. But then you can set what type of echoing type of thing it would have. And this one I want mount tens. And then the fade time of each echo. So if you were to go echo, 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 that's like maybe 4 seconds of an echo. So it would repeat that, you know, multiple times. And with a wind, this is kind of like a wind thing that I have here. You don't really want that because it would just get extremely, extremely annoying. So you don't even have to have an echo. Sometimes a little tiny echo can really help out, even if it's more than a bigger echo can, because it just repeats it just so much that it gives it the inclination that it is echoing. So just 1.5 is good, because it'd be echo, 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 cause like 0.2, and then the volume of that echo in comparison with the the volume of this. I'm sorry for that long analogy that meant absolutely nothing in the end. Okay, the priority, that's basically if you have multiple of these, it's like overlapping each other, which you can do that and it's okay. But the priority of this, basically, you need to make sure that you set a priority if you have overlapping ones. If you only have one, or even if you have multiple ones, but they don't touch at all, like you make sure that they're not touching. I mean, you need to set a priority if they are touching at all. But if they're not touching, you don't really need to worry about that. But if they are touching, you set a priority to determine which one like calculates first and whatnot, so that it can calculate it correctly. Because otherwise, it just calculates them all at the same time, and you get a just mess. It might sound okay, but it would just be better. It kind of works better with UDK if you make sure and set a priority. So whichever one you want to process first. So basically the main dominant sound. So like if you had a little pond section, or like for instance, outdoors. You've got the wind blow. Oh, it's raining. Okay, you've got a rain sound. And you walk up to a waterfall, and then there's a waterfall sound. Well, your main dominant sound is going to be the raining, because that's everywhere. That's your generic background sound. And then you have your waterfall. So it calculates the rain first, and then adds the waterfall in to that. That's basically how that works. And then after that, if you had like 3 overlapping, and then you had your third one, like your frogs or something, it would then add the frogs into that. But the rain would be first, and that'd be your kind of your base, sort of. So that's how that works. But if you don't you don't have to set it if you don't have them overlapping. So now this part can kind of get a little confusing. But your ambient zone settings is what's really going to affect this. This is kind of why you want to have an ambient zone. The reverb is what it's named. It's actually called a reverb volume, and the reverb is great. It's basically echo. The reverb is great, but a lot of times the stuff right here is what you want it for. Because that's what I was talking about earlier, where you get the effect of the muffling and walking into a different area kind of thing. So the exterior volume is basically means what the outside will sound like while you're inside. So it's not what the outside is just going to sound like. It's kind of like backwards. So while you're inside, this is what the outside's going to sound like. And the interior is while you're outside, what can you hear from the inside? So if you're in a restaurant, how much of the cars can you hear going by, like from the outside? Is it a really set back? Is it like a strip mall type restaurant where there's a parking lot and then the road way off in the back, and you can only hear like distant horn honks, and even then it's quiet? Or is it right at the road and you can hear the cars going by, and it's not very loud, but then you can really hear the horn honks kind of thing? Or, can you hear people walking around outside, like in New York? Or stuff like that, You want to be able to set the volumes of how much you can hear, which basically is what that is. And this is the, master volume. So you don't want to set this high, because you don't, whenever you're inside, you don't really want to be able to hear the outside. So you want to set this, lower than your volume inside, because then it just gets weird, and it's like higher outside. It would end up increasing the sound if you set it higher. You don't really have to worry about that too much. It's just make sure, just set it like low values. You can do 5 and 6 if your volume's extremely high, but then your fade out time. So whatever your volume on the outside is, so you're in zone 1 and you're walking into zone 2. Well, you can still hear zone 1, but as you're walking into zone 2, like as the door's closing or something, the volume is getting lower and lower and lower, and then it gets to its lowest point. And then as you're walking back out, it gets higher, 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 highest point. So that's what the fade time is. And this is in seconds, so it would be 2 seconds. Now the low pass filter is basically muffling amount, so how much it'll muffle it, and then the muffling of time. So you can individually do both of those. You don't even have to have any muffling if you don't want it. And then your interior volume, so this controls what you can hear from the inside. If you're like, looking at a shop or something, this controls like how much you can hear from the shop from the outside. Basically, you're standing on the outside, you can hear talking and stuff from the inside, whatever. This is that. So it's like the opposite. And I've messed with the controls a little bit here, so that's basically the reverb volume in a nutshell. That's basically all it does. But it's really good. It's simple, but really good. So basically, this is kind of the opposite. So I'll just say this again. Exterior is while you're inside, what you can hear from the outside. That's the exterior volume. Interior is while you're outside, the interior volume is what you can hear from the inside. So that's that. Now, this right here, open this property up. Now, spatialize, attenuate, pretty simple. Spatialize just tells it whether or not the sound itself is positioned in 3D space. So if you don't have like any terrain at all in your level, you wouldn't really need spatialization. But if you have mountains and things, then you would want spatialization, because if you have a wind sound as you walk up, if you have, a big volcano, the rest of the ground is just flat. Okay, you put your wind sound at the very top of the volcano. That would actually be a good spot, because as you walk up, this inner sphere here is the loudest point. So as you walk, the outer sphere, as you walk towards, you wouldn't be able to hear the wind at all on the edge of this outer sphere, but as you walk inside it, it's at its lowest point, and then higher, 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 higher. Inner sphere is the highest point. So if you do that in 3D space, then you have a sphere instead of just a 2D thing, which unchecking this box would make it do that. So if you have like, the volcano, as you get up, the wind will get a little louder as you're getting higher in the atmosphere. So that's kind of what that is useful for. And in pretty much in all situations, you want it to spatialize. Sometimes you don't, but attenuation, maximum distance model. I'd want natural sound on that one actually, because you can kind of just read that and figure out what that does. The attenuation type, and whatnot. And then the radius minimum. If I increase this, the inner sphere will diminish. So there's a very tiny area. And see, the thing is, you would have to actually jump up, or like build or have a terrain mountain thing to get the highest volume, because it's a sphere, remember. So you would have to get inside this area to be able to hear the maximum volume. Now if I increase this to like 6,000, then it's much bigger, and here is the maximum volume. So you have a lot less fade time. And then if you have go back to that. So I'll just set it back to like 3,000. There we go. And then your maximum radius goes, just controls how big the max sphere is. Like outside of the sphere, you wouldn't be able to hear the sound at all. But again, I don't have this attenuating, so it's basically just going to go on infinitely from all directions, and there's not going to fade at all. Which I have that set for a reason, so that this ambient sound thing will work correctly, because you can set up radiuses and ambient zones and reverb volumes, whatever they're called, doesn't matter, and it'll work fine. But you want to make sure that if you do that, that the edge of it is within the edge. This area is near the edge, because whenever you're walking in, if you won't get the proper effect of it actually muffling, because you'll just already be inside the zone before the sound actually starts to kick in. And you can do that fine. Sometimes you have to have multiple sounds in one zone, and it works fine. It doesn't like mess up anything, but you won't get the proper effect that you're looking for, which is why I set them to just go on forever, so that you can kind of sort of hear it just a little bit, because some sounds you just hear all the time, like wind, if it's a windy day. And of course, you could always use Kismet to turn them on and off and things like that, but I'm not going to get into that right now because that's rather advanced. This is your low-pass filter, so you're muffling. And you can actually modulate this here, so your minimum max pitch, your volume minimum and maximum, and you can add more sound slots. Now this is very important, because this is actually a sound sample, so this is not a sound cue. This is just the base sound. It's not a bunch of sounds together. So this is going to be, like what I showed in the importing thing with the sound cue editor. And to use that, I just go find content browser. Here's the sound node wave. Now here is wind, grassy, stereo. Those are pretty much the same thing. But these have more things in them to make it sound more realistic. Now you could just click this and go, edit using sound previewer, but you're not going to be able to get anything, because you have to actually convert it to a sound cue and then edit it for it to work right. So you could just, where is the... It's here somewhere. Let's see, node wave. Let's see. Yeah, you can export it and then re-import it or something to be able to get it to sound cue. You can form these. I just forget exactly the way about going about that off the top of my head. This stuff always escapes me whenever I need it, but if you wanted to, you go sound cue editor, you've got the attenuation and looping and everything already set before you. So this is just a sound simple using one bass sound, but here you have, you only have one bass sound, but you could add like some birds chirping or whatever in the background, crickets or some rain, or if you wanted a storm, some lightning even, which would then, you could have all that together, which is what a lot of people do. They have the rain, the lightning, and the wind sometimes together, and then that way they can modulate it and have the lightning play at random intervals, and it will just be random, because you can do that with this. You do delay, and then you have, let's see, a random node, and then you could just have it or you could just do a random node and don't even have a delay, because sometimes you don't want lightning constantly, so you could set up an extra delay before it would process. You could set up several delays so that it would be kind of far in between. But and then you modulate it so you have different pitches and all, and so this is really good for being able to edit everything very precision like, and you can play it and then edit it, play it, edit it, play it, stuff like that, which the play button is not working for me right now. And you can also do that right here. You can add more sound slots and things, but it would still be a sound node wave. It wouldn't actually, I don't think it would actually save it as a sound cue. But that's that. And now if you wanted to actually add in just use a sound node wave, and I should have actually said that to beginning with, but you have ambient sound simple, which uses the sound node waves, ambient sound simple non-loop, so that it won't loop, non-looping toggleable, and then simple toggleable. So you have 4 types. Well, actually you have 2 basic types. You have a simple, well, it'd be more like 3 or something, but you have just simple, and then a simple non-looping, so that it won't loop, it'll just play once, and then a toggleable, and then you have a toggleable non-looping version as well. So toggleable means it can be turned on and off, and then you have a movable type too, I think. No, the sound, the sound cues are movable, so they may not be toggleable though. I don't know. That's why you have multiple different types to be able to work with them. So you want to use, sometimes you want to use the simple sound, so you can have them toggleable, and sometimes you want to have them moving around like a radio or something. You can move that around and then play it and things, which that would require a lot of scripting as well. But anyway, you get the point. So those are basically those 2 things, and I use the simple so that I could have it not attenuate. And I could easily, because the one advantage over this is that you can just sit here and edit it right here, but you don't have as good as control over the actual editing as a sound cue, so it's not as refined, but it's really quick and easy to edit on the fly. Because otherwise you would have to go, if this was just a regular sound, just a regular ambient sound, then you would have to go into the sound cue editor and edit it then, but it's not. So oh, one very important thing I just remembered. Go away. Notice that this is in parentheses, it says ambient. Now this is none. That's none just because I didn't change it yet. But these only ambient sound types work in a reverb volume. That's very important. If your sound isn't working, make sure it's listed as ambient, and you can change that. And this only really works with the sound node waves, or the sound cues. The changing, I think the reverb volumes work with just any type of sound node wave. But if it's a sound cue, you need to make sure that you go to sound class, you go to master, SFX, and ambient. And this does 2 things. First of all, it tells the game that this is an ambient type sound, so that it will use it as such, and it can be used as such. And that way, and sometimes it can't be used as other things, but it can be only used as ambient. But then also it allows you to sort them a little better, so you can look at it and say, okay, I know the name of it, but what type is it? Oh, it's an ambient type. Okay, so you can kind of sort it that way as well. But you want to make sure these are ambient if you're using them in a reverb volume, otherwise it won't work correctly. Now, I want to show you what this sounds like. Now, you'll be able to hear it within the building. Okay, you can hear it. You can hear it. It's kind of muffled. See how it changed and it sounds more open? So that's kind of what that does. It allows you to be able to edit that easily. And I need to actually go and turn the interior volume down. So if I turn this down to like 0.5 and go back into the level, watch what happens. It's a whole lot quieter. And it's got like a ringing sort of sound to it. It's quieter, but it's muffled. So it's a whole lot quieter now. Now you can still hear the sound itself oscillating within that region. Now if I go out here, it got louder, and you could kind of hear this fading of the you could kind of hear this go. So you kind of, as you walk out, it kind of opens up and you can hear it a little more. So it gives really realistic effect to the sounding, and I really like that. It's really good. So that's kind of how that works. And of course, placing these, you can just kind of just place them like you would a light or anything. You just kind of place them, and there's your sound. It's really pretty simple to place these sound things down. I just kind of wanted to show the dealing with the whole reverb volume effect and things. And this episode's probably running incredibly long. Yeah, placing these is relatively easy. You just go right-click, add ambient sound, and this will be the default ambient sound is just going to be a sound cue. You can press F4, right-click it, auto. Of course, audio component. Just go into the content browser and then just find something, click it. I don't have anything selected. This one. Bam. There it is. Sounds in. Simple. Now this is attenuated, so there's a sphere. So you would hear this on the inside of the building, in this little, probably upstairs section. You would hear this. But I'm going to, and you can control the volume and things, but you can't. If you notice, that's all the options you have. Like I click this and that's it. Unlike the other thing over here, you've got all these options. But again, if I go into the content browser, I right-click this, open it up in the sound cue editor, then you can edit all of these sounds, and you have a lot more fine-tune over the actual editing of the sound, because you can crossfade and all kinds of awesome stuff that you can't do in this menu. And I'm not saying that one or the other is good. They're both good. They both have their uses. This one you want to use for just single sounds, like if you have a machine, a generator or something running, and you just get like a machine sound or something like let me bring this back up and type in machine, and I go sound cues, or let's do gen all assets. There we go. Now let me find, should be like a machine type thing. If I do okay, let me do sound cues as well, or sound. It would have to be sound cues and sound wave data, and then do here. So you've got like these machine sounds. You could use that or something, and there's a bunch of these. Some of them are a lot better, but or you could make your own, and you could just have that as like the sound, and it's just running, and you use those ambient sound wave things to be able to control the sound of how that works. So they all have their uses. You just have to experiment, be able to determine what you want to be able to use each one for. Everything in UDK has its use. There's not one thing you want to use over another. Even the BSP, there's uses for that, because you want to be able to fill out your level first, and then come back with the static mesh and kind of fill in a lot of stuff that you can. But sometimes you just can build a building out of BSP, and there you go. It's great for proc building, which I'll get into much later, because that's advanced stuff. That's kind of like procedural generation kind of type thing, but it's not really. But anyway, so basically, that's. I'll make one last little edit here so you can see. I want to adjust the low pass filter volume. So I'll put this up to like a whopping 3. Not really whopping, but, and that way you can see the difference of the muffling. So you heard what it was last time, and it's kind of like more muffled than it was. So if I go back in, watch. And yeah, the volume actually comes to the edge of the building here. So I'll just step in and step out. So there's a good example of what that can do. Now one more thing, and I'll stop the recording here. The last thing that is important is you need to make sure that anytime you put this ambient zone thing in here, you don't actually have to rebuild your lighting, which is thankful, but you do need to make sure you rebuild your geometry. And you don't actually have to do that whenever you just place normal sounds, but if you have an ambient zone and you edit or move any sound, or if you add static meshes or something in there, you need to make sure to rebuild your level. Because it uses, you know, the surrounding area for using the reverb effects and how it interacts with the sound itself and things like that. So if you just, you know, hit the little button there, it takes, you know, like that long for this map with all this terrain and stuff. So the geometry build doesn't take very long at all. So it just, you know, quickly recomputes that, and then the ambient zone will work just fine. So if it, that's my last little bit of advice. If you have any questions about anything or any of the other tutorials, or have a suggestion on something I should do, let me know. I'm probably going to do fog and particle effects next time, if you're curious. And after that, probably some more advanced Kismet stuff. So. And then maybe some matinee stuff after that. So that's kind of my lineup for a little later on the road. So thanks for watching. Have any suggestions or anything, let me know, and I'd appreciate it a lot. And thanks for watching.